I'm Evert van Veer, and I'm heading up Comedy Central in Africa, which is one of the multiple Viacom brands we run here on the territory.
And you're doing work here in South Africa, so what's the comedy scene like here in South Africa?
The comedy scene in South Africa is a very well-developed, large scene, I can say so. There's many comedians. I think an example is that we had a show called Comedy Central Presents Live at Parkers. For 16 months in a row, we had 4 comedians in each of those shows. So that's a lot of comedians.
Yeah. And who are the more famous comedians out of those?
I think the most famous one is Trevor Noah. He doesn't live in South Africa anymore. He moved to LA. He's developing a series for Fox, I believe, at the moment. And he is larger than South Africa now. He's been on the Jay Leno show, David Letterman, I believe. He truly exported South African comedy abroad.
And who are the big names at a local level?
I think Luis Sogola is a very big name at the moment. He has a late night show on ETV, which is terrestrial television, so he reaches the entire population.
And what makes South African comedy different from other types of comedy?
I think there's a lot of similarities to begin with in comedy all over the world. We've launched brands all over the world with Comedy Central and investigated the local comedy scene. But typically in South Africa there's a lot about race. I think that makes a lot of sense considering the history of South Africa. A good example is we do quarterly events at the Lyric Theatre here in Gold Reef City. We just had one this weekend on Friday and Saturday night, and we themed that night race. So we theme our nights. So we had one on sex. We're going to have one in 3 months on religion, another topic that is favorable in South Africa. But race is the obvious one that stands out that South Africans excel in.
Yes. And what, you mentioned sex. What are the taboos in terms of comedy to do with sex?
Oh, they're the same taboos everywhere, to be honest. I think if I take it to a South African level, the South African audience is a little bit more conservative when it comes to that. You also see that, for example, in The Watershed on television. We cannot air those shows before 9 o'clock. Really, well, in other maybe Northern European territories, you could.
So it's quite, for South Africa, it's quite adult material.
It is, but I think stand-up comedy is a genre that is adult in its essence anyway. You don't do a stand-up gig at a school with young children. Stand-up is at night in a club. And
the type of comedy that's being done, is it observational comedy, or is it stories, or is it jokes?
It depends on the comedian. Some are very observational, some tell a lot of one-liners, jokes per minute. Some take more of a storytelling approach. It depends, and I think all those qualities are available here in the South African comedians.
And how do South African comedians make a living?
Well, not all of them make a living by telling jokes completely.
Yeah. Some of them have day jobs.
Some of them have day jobs, and I also know some of them are producers. Some of them have a lot of commercial gigs. Some do on-air advertising for the bigger brands, your banks and mobile phone companies. But that goes for all comedians in all territories, or everybody who makes a living in entertainment. There's only a few that can really make a living out of it.
Make a full-time living.
And that doesn't stop with comedians. It goes for musicians. It goes for actors.
Sure.
All those performing artists.
And the kind of venues, because you were talking about late night venues, are these club venues or are they big venues?
Yeah, there is here in Johannesburg, there is a full-time comedy club that has comedy every single night of the week. It's in the Monte Casino. It's called Joe Parker's Comedy Club. And we partner with him because it's actually also the only full-time comedy club. No, another one opened last year in Cape Town called Yamase Comedy Club. But there's only 2 full-time comedy clubs in Africa that I'm aware of.
And so, other than that, it would be people doing venues in their own right, or as part of some other thing like.
There's a lot of venues in South Africa, in Johannesburg and Cape Town. It's linked to a lot of the casinos, but there's rooms varying from 200 people to 5,000 people. Michael McIntyre played here last year. He did the Coca-Cola Dome. That's 10,000 people. Jeff Dunham did Carnival City. That's 5,000 people. Not only the local, but also the international comedy scene is discovering South Africa. It's somewhere where they're selling out. They're selling tickets.
Yeah. So it's on the performance circuit for.
Yeah.
10,000 is a lot of people, isn't it?
It's a lot of people.
So what are people paying to go and see comedy here?
I I think they pay for the same reason everybody pays to see comedy. It's a relief from everyday life.
Yeah.
I think maybe
How much are they paying? Sorry, that was the question.
Oh, that varies on the artist and the venue. From 50 rand to 1,000 rand. There's no.
Yeah, so there's a complete spread.
Yeah, there's a complete spread.
Yeah.
Maybe comedy more. People just like to be entertained, to escape from their everyday life, and I think what comedy is really good at, it puts things in perspective. It makes you look at things maybe in a different way. It makes you talk about things that maybe normally you don't talk about with people you're with, but because it's stand-up comedy, those artists will put the finger on the sore spot, so to say, and maybe one day on that night you will discuss race and you will discuss religion, well, otherwise people ignore it.
Also, it teases at people's sensitive points, doesn't it?
It does, but it's good to laugh about things, you know.
Yeah.
When disaster happens, you have to make a joke about it, and they often say comics, sometimes it's disaster plus time.
Yeah.
So some things are okay to make jokes about now, and some things will have to wait, but in the end you will joke about it and make it part of history.
Yeah. And so what does Comedy Central do? Because it's a full-time 24-hour channel, but what's on Comedy Central?
Well, we have all sorts of comedy on the channel. We have US sitcom, we have hidden camera, we have of course local and international stand-up, we have sketch shows, we have clip shows. We have all genres of comedy on the channel 24 hours a day. In daytime though, most of it is family-friendly sitcom.
Yeah. And so how much of that is at the moment South African?
We have a monthly and a quarterly local production on the channel.
Okay, so that's an hour of...
It depends. Sometimes the Parker gigs were an hour, but the Lyric gigs, the one we had this weekend, are 2 hours. And next to that, we are currently running a daily live show with Carrot Cliff every morning from 6 to 7:15. So every day he hosts his show and he will comment on things happening at the moment, what people are reading in the newspapers, so they then can discuss it at the water cooler when they come to the office.
And you're going to be doing something similar in Nigeria?
Yes, well, we are going to activate our brand in Nigeria this year, and we're looking into exactly how we're going to do that. But of course, the channel is already available in Nigeria. We just haven't had any activations with our brand, like a Lyric or a Parker's Comedy Central Presents in Lagos, Abuja.
So if you're a comedian in Lagos, this is a good moment for you.
It's a good moment for them, yeah. We've worked with Basketmouth, for example. He hosted one of the comedy nights here in Johannesburg, because he is a Nigerian comedian that travels really well. People like him. And he performed here in Joburg and he sold out.